soil. A fully regulated, seamless link between traditional finance and the digital crypto world, offering secure returns fully backed by tangible, real-world assets.
From meme to utility, Floki has it all. NFT metaverse game called Valhalla. Floki University, DeFi, charity, and shopping. Floki is governed by the people, for the people. Floki, together, there is no stopping us.
The Credifi testnet is live, so head on over to demo.credifi.finance to see how you can effortlessly experiment with autonomous earning, NFT corporate bonds, Credi and X-Credi utilities, and Module X.
Good afternoon, everyone. BC Richfield here, coming to you live from London. It's just gone a couple of minutes past midday, making it a few minutes past 11 o'clock UTC. Big shout out to everybody who's tuning in live today, as well as everybody that's going to be watching this on catch up. Simon in there first this morning. Good morning, my friend. You're in there for the win. Our dear QBS Graphics, Nit, Moral, Suleiman K, Joshua Walker. Hello, hello, hello. And obviously to everybody else as well. Got a few people starting to pour in now. Gio, my friend. CS Loechi. Afternoon, all from Morocco. Haven't seen you in a while, mate. I hope you've been keeping well. That is an awesome place. Fun enough, this morning I was with taking the dog out first thing and saw a friend of ours who runs a restaurant, Moroccan guy from where is he from? Not Marrakesh, is it? It's goodness me, why is that evading me? It'll come to me in a minute. It's not Casanova, but it's something very, very similar. How are we all doing this morning, guys? Yeah, Mark is looking to fly. We've got the ETH chart up here already. Philip, hello, mate, from Croatia. What a beautiful country that is. And Ricky Garcia, our friend, how are you doing? So let's not mess around. Thank you, Suleiman K. Yeah, she is gorgeous, beautiful husky, and a total diva. So we're here for our Alt Request Wednesday, right? So we're going to take a look at all the bits and pieces that you guys would like. Erica, my lovely friend, how are you? So we are going to look at that. Suleiman K, you're in Adelaide, are you? A friend of mine is out in a place called Mildura, and he literally could not be happier out there. Moved out there years ago, went out there with the England youth team and fell in love with it. The England youth cricket team, fell in love with it out there, met a beautiful Australian girl. Then they got a couple of kids and lives a wonderful lifestyle. And the weather's, it's your winter at the moment, isn't it? And I love the fact that it is considerably warmer than it is here in our summer. Yeah, sure, maybe we can. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at PYTH. Absolutely. Keep them coming in, guys. If you've got anything you'd like me to take a look at, we'll get some charts up. Yeah, really, really awesome to hear, mate. I hope you're enjoying it over there. So, ETH, right? What an absolute beast. This was actually quite funny because we were sat down on Monday, first thing in the morning, talking about with the trading team about how kind of ETH has been lagging behind Bitcoin and how it really does look like it could just have an absolute rip. A really good friend of mine and one of our fundamental, or the lead of our fundamental analyst team, a guy called Chris, turned around and said he was planning to move his portfolio around and go really, really heavy on ETH and some other ETH-backed projects. And yeah, I mean, shortly after, obviously, we all know the rest. It had absolutely ripped like a belter. Yeah, sure, we can absolutely, let's do that. Let's write down some of these. What have we got? Pith, INJ. What's the ticker for Wormhole, Simon? Can you remind me? Yep, definitely going to check INJ for you, Stefan. No problem. Yeah, Gala as well. Let's take a look at that. Abin or Andan, or I'm so bad with names, but I desperately want to. Abinandan? Abinandan. There we go. What a beautiful name. Tammy, good morning. That's just W, is it? Awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, look, let's just start with these. We're just going to pull up some naked charts here and just look if we had any kind of early indications on when this was going to go. So for anybody that might be new to the show, I'm looking at these charts in terms of price action, in terms of liquidity, meaning that I'm looking for a couple of different things here, right? I'm looking for price to react at old highs, all right? Also for price to react to old lows, yeah? So example here, right? We saw this recovery here. We've got another example here, right? And obviously a super important one, which was this. Okay, we're going to look a little bit at displacement today, guys, all right, and how we can kind of, you're never ever certain, right? You're never certain where the market's going to go. What we do is we overlay our strategies over time, and especially when it comes to trading, not necessarily investing, but it's a lot more of a long burn, right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify areas of high probability to engage with our trades, and we're going to do that using what's known as a triple screen system. Meaning that we have a higher time frame, in this case the daily. If we were looking at the daily, we would drop to an hourly and look to execute on a 5 minute. If we're looking at a weekly, 4 hour 15 minute, for example, or 50 or 4 hour 15 minute, and then I then use a 1 to 3 minute to execute. Let's take a sip of tea and let's crack on. The other thing that we're looking for here is how price reacts at the gaps, right? Fair value gaps like this one. All right, so what we often see is price purge liquidity, in this case below an old low, which is also known as external liquidity. And then we're looking for price to draw towards an inefficiency in the market, which is this, the gaps here, the fair value gap. And then from here, we either want to see price reject and continue down. Where does it then look for liquidity? Below an old low. Yeah, so like we see here. And then from here, what you're doing is you're asking yourself, okay, well, what is price doing? If we violate this, if we close above it, then we assume that the draw is then the next liquidity, which is typically resting above the next high or low, okay? So with all of that in mind, why was this really important here? So when we're looking at how price reacts at a level, right, we want to see if it's gaining acceptance above or below that level, yeah? Or if it's displacing above or below it, okay? So for an example, let's use this example, shall we? This would be a really, really key example of displacement, right? So we've taken this higher here, but look at the energy through this. Yes, this is an extreme example, right? What we've also done is we've left this gap, all right? Showing that there's an inefficiency in the market. Now the expectation is, and it doesn't obviously always have to do this, is that we've had this rip, right? Now price will come down into this inefficiency here, and then we're looking for continuation higher. Now, key thing is here, we never know how deep it's going to go into the inefficiency, and at the end of the day, if it closes below it, then our assumption would be that we're heading for the liquidity below these lows, okay? So that's the nature of how we're going to look at this, and certainly going to be the nature of our TA. So what did this tell us here? Well, if we look at this low, right, you want to see how price is reacting here. We see the long wick gets bought up, then we get this nice bullish engulfing candle, right? What I like about this as well is even when we're looking at internal range liquidity here, like with this is just meaning kind of a lesser higher, right? This here is clearly the obvious higher. If you were looking at this in terms of market structure, you would be saying the price has come down, set a low, higher, low, higher, low, and then up, right? But obviously within this, we have all these other little highs and lows as well, right? So when we see this get taken here, yeah, and close above, you can see you get a strong body close, all right? Then what you want to do ideally is wait for the next candle to close and see if you get a gap, all right? So then if you get a gap like we had here, this is where we really start to get interested in it. So a couple of things here. One, when we got this bullish engulfing candle here, we left this higher untouched, right? So what we're saying to ourselves is if price can't get acceptance below this, and to just quote someone I learned so much from the markets and someone who I got ultimate respect for in Trader SC, this becomes a deviation, right? So we've deviated here, we climb back in, then price is basically looking for the next liquidity, right? So you can't really draw on this time frame, so we'll use an arrow, and the next liquidity is resting above this higher. What we then want to do is see how price reacts here, right? So when we close above this higher, yeah, and remembering that we're looking at this and we're saying to ourselves, okay, how has price reacted here? We can see that we get a strong body close here. So the best way to think about the candles are the bodies tell you what price has achieved. Excuse me. The wicks tell you what it tried to achieve, yeah? So in this example here, even though a lot of people would see this as a bearish candle because it's black or it would be red on a typical chart, it's absolutely not, right? So again, when we're looking at this, we can see that price purged liquidity below this low. Price tried to close below this and just got bought up. And these wicks are very telling. This then closes as a pin bar with a short nose, or also known, as a bullish hammer candle. And then we're saying, okay, well, when it's gained acceptance in there and that has closed, our first assumption is to look for the liquidity. We've taken external, right? Then we're looking for internal, okay, which would be this. So from here, we can surmise that price is likely to draw up to here before it makes its next move. Now, this wasn't actually the cleanest. You want to see these respected, but when price closed above it here, again, we expect price then to reach for liquidity above the next high. We can see here that price does come to take this liquidity. Now, when you see an area like this violated, what we do is we then see that as an inverted fair value gap, meaning we expect this to act as support. Henceforth, when price closes back below it here, the assumption is then price is seeking liquidity lower down. Okay, so basically it's just to say that we were looking for longs in this area here until proved otherwise, meaning that when price closes below. Now we face a little bit of a challenge here, right? Whenever price has run this hot, considering we haven't set a new all-time high here, right? Why am I saying that? Well, something else we want to note here is that these are equal highs, okay, which we'll see clearer on a lower time frame. They are really, really key liquidity pools, okay, as are highs and lows that are within fair value gaps like this one. So if I draw this back, we can see that this high goes through this fair value gap, makes it an intermediate term high. The displacement that we had through this as well was really, really telling, because you want to see these respected. If they do get tagged, you want to see price wick down below it, and then there's an assumption that that would then be rejecting price, be it temporarily or be it a shift in trend. Remember, we're using a high time frame here, right? So to give you an example, when we're reacting at this fair value gap, this is where we're looking to see if we get long positions until we close below. So all we do is focus in here on our longs, right? So then when we drop down to our next system here, which is the hourly, yeah, then what you're looking in here are those signals as to what price wants to do, okay? So obviously easy to say, Sunday, typically we see price consolidate over the weekend a little bit. You can see the lesser moves, less volume in the market. Traditional markets aren't open as well. But then what we see here is really, really interesting moves. So we get this initial pump here on ETH, right? This happened just before the London session, so over Asia into London. Then at the beginning of the London session, we saw price sell off quite aggressively, right? This ended up being a very, very clever trap. So price ripping, gets sold off, kind of consolidates here. What do we do? Fair value gap, all right? So we're looking at this to reject. So as price takes its initial rejection here, yeah, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, right? We have to respect the highest time frame here. So while we're holding this, yeah, remember this is our daily fair value gap, bullish fair value gap. While we're holding this, it's very, very dangerous to short, okay? So no problem shorting into this, yeah? If we get a trigger for it, we can see here, for example, it wasn't exactly a major higher, right? But look how price respected this. Again, look at the wicks. The wicks showing that we've got sell pressure. We set a fair value gap below. Expectation was price was going to draw down into this. When it closed below, there's an assumption again that price is heading for the next liquidity, which is down here, right? Makes it even more interesting then when price recovers very quickly. We see this rejection here, yeah, bearish gap. Actually also a balanced price range, because we've got a bearish gap going through a bullish gap, means it should be even stronger resistance. So when price ultimately closes above this, that's why it's purple, because it's been inverted. And this is where we're going to look for those long positions, right? So now we would move to a 5-minute chart. And then what you're looking for here are your entries, okay? Whatever your particular system is, whether you're using inversions, whether you're using, sweeps, breaks, for example. So you could look at this, the move that kind of comes up here, we've closed, and then you would be looking, say, for example, if you were looking at this as sort of like a breaker line type process, you would be waiting for this high to be closed above. All right, stops down below this low, or you could take it down below this low. And then you could either market enter here or wait for a close, set your limit order, and it comes back above. I'm not really going to go into kind of entry methods and bits and pieces. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. You can use breakers, you can use inversions, you can use ICT 2022 model, for example, where you're looking for expansion, although you would have ultimately, I think, probably just about been okay. We didn't take liquidity here, but we're reacting from this gap. We've displaced above this high, so you'd be looking at these gaps for your entry. All right. So that's how I'm kind of looking at the chart. So with that out of the way, you know, my thoughts on ETH are that we probably get some kind of correction at the moment. Yeah, kind of down a little bit more towards this area before we then really start to kind of pick up the bids and then go higher. However, you know, as we've seen, especially with cryptocurrencies, they can run incredibly hot. So if I wanted to look at this on a more granular kind of time frame, I'd be looking at kind of the 4 hour and the 15 minute. And while we hold this bullish gap here, then my bias remains bullish. All right. Again, if we close below here, we've got this low, we've got these inefficiencies here, these gaps. Price can easily retrace down into these to go. You could take some intraday short trades. I'd always recommend adding a little bit, either adjusting your position size a little bit lower when you're counter trend trading, all right, because at any point this thing can really rip and take off. And I certainly wouldn't be shorting it in here, right? I'd be going down now looking at a 15 minute, which would be my framing time frame, secondary time frame. I'd be waiting for the New York Open, which would happen here at 1:30 my time, all right? And then the plan would be something like this, right? As long as we continue to hold this, right, that would be our open. And then what we would be looking for here is for price to come down and take out some liquidity. We've got low of day here, yeah. We've got the New York PM session low here, for example. But basically, we want to see a nice purge on liquidity, yeah, moving into the open. And then from here, when that's purged, you want to see a strong recovery, and then we can look higher up, all right? And in this recovery, you ideally want to see a gap, right? Shows the displacement, shows that the buyers have stepped in and it's struggling to pair orders. And then from there, you can look to kind of get in your long positions. Close below this, like I said, and I think we purge a little bit lower, but that certainly doesn't mean that we're in any way overall bearish. So let's just take a quick look at the chat very quickly. Solomon K, what else have we got? Okay, let's rip through some of these, shall we? CTSI. Aave. Wow. Do you know what? I haven't looked at Aave in ages, actually. I used to trade Aave quite a lot. Good afternoon, Raphael. Peter as well. Hello, mate. Didn't see you sneak in there. Melbourne, lovely. I was just saying to Solomon K and the crew earlier that friends out in Mildura absolutely love their lives out there. So, before I go off rumbling around, Stefan, yeah, we're absolutely get onto Injective for you. We're going to do that after we do PIF. Let's have a look. Here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look. We're going to focus on, say, like the daily and the 4 hour, probably going to make up the key part of our analysis here. So what we can see here with PIF, first of all, is that we're in this downtrend, right? We always want to kind of look and see and say to ourselves, okay, how's the market reacting? What's the structure, right? We can see very clearly a nice uptrend here, all right? And no point did it break the uptrend here until we kind of had this breakdown over here. Something that I learned from ICT, very fortunate to be part of his original mentorship too many years ago now, and especially from SZ, is looking at these previous areas of consolidation. Yeah. So I favor using the bodies here, right? Looking at these previous areas of consolidation and then seeing them as areas of mitigation, right? Meaning that this was an area where we had a lot of buyers stepping in, right? It caused this pump. When price gets back there, if you're seeing weakness in this area, which would be in the form of this, right? Beautiful fair value gap that we have here. Yeah. Then this makes it an even more high probability setup. Right? Price has ripped down through here. We're then seeing this area starts to get kind of closed below. I know we've got the wick down here, right? I'm focused more on the bodies. Like I say, that's where, you know, the trading has kind of taken place. That's where the success has been. And then we get this, price rips back into this, and then we ultimately sell off, right? So we can see that we had the same here. Okay, while we didn't get, do that in the same color, right? While we didn't get a gap through here, what we can see is you can see how this very quickly became resistance. And then what we do get, right, is we get this little gap here, right, that materializes afterwards. So it's a really good way to look at your kind of high time frame charts and find out where you are, especially these more kind of clear and obvious areas of consolidation. When you see these, you know, what we would say abnormal wicks, yeah, these really long downside wicks. Look at how price has kind of reacted to this. And I really like this reaction from PIF here. We've come into this key level here, right? Prior area of consolidation here, right? So if we, you know, apply the same principles we were just discussing, move this across, you can see how this area is kind of still offering support, right? So we've come into this, price isn't really doesn't have any energy to go through it. Look at the way we kind of disrespected this area here, just ripped straight through it, left a big gap, returns here. That's when we want to take our short plays. And ultimately then, if price closes above this, the same as we were talking about before, we assume that's strength stepping in, and we would then start to target some of these highs in here or fair value gaps that sit above. So this is a nice reaction from price. I like this at the moment. Also, I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but we have inverted this fair value gap here. Okay, which you see on my charts in the darker purple. That for me is a really, really good indication that price is now flipping this area. Look, we've taken key liquidity below here. We found support at this previous, whether people talk about it as order blocks or supply, demand, etc. But look at it as the consolidation before price ripped. All right, these areas are typically well respected when we trade back into them, like we do here, for example. Then you flip them the other way, and they should go from support here to resistance, as we can see. So now we want to see PIF build a base here. Okay, looking at this on kind of a 4 hour to just drop it down and see if we can work it out more granularly. Perfect, right? This is really, really key. All right, so we've got this bearish FVG here. Okay, I know this is going to look like a load of boxes kind of stacked on top of each other, but do bear with me. We also have a balanced price range, okay, and that's again where we've got a bullish gap here, closed through with a bearish gap. All right, so we see this as an area or what's known as a balanced price range. Okay, so with that in mind, if our high time frame, if our daily is telling us that we're looking for long setups here, well, then quite simply what we want to see is we want to see this inverted, meaning we see this closed above. That's going to be an indication for me then that we're going to see some strength coming into the market, and we can start looking to rip some longs. We've got a lot of these, that untapped high here. You've got all of these lovely untapped highs in here. This one here, obviously almost relative equal highs here. So there's a lot of liquidity resting here for price, all right? So bullish on this. This is a great recovery. You often see these inversion fair value gaps as well, as we can see here. You often see these framing, these points of reversal, all right? Same way as we saw even on a smaller scale, right? We've got one here. See that? Price closes below, then treats it as resistance, and then we ultimately sell off and we start respecting these other gaps lower down. Okay, so that's where I am on PIF. So where's our friend Stefan? Here we go. So let's take a look at INJ. Injective. Do this and start on the daily as well. Make sure we're nice and consistent. Okay, like we've kind of seen from ETH, but we haven't kind of seen the same kind of rip at the moment anyway. This is nice. Looking at our kind of theory, that price moves from external to internal liquidity, right? We've taken this high, nice strong close above this as well, right? Remember we were talking about that earlier. We've got a key liquidity pool sat here, equal highs, all right? And also, just for some extra measure, we got that through a fair value gap, making it an intermediate term high as well. That's a really key draw on liquidity. So when we rip down here, then what are we looking for? Well, we've had the displacement above the high. We're now looking for price to come down and have a reaction at our bullish gap below. Okay, so this is a really, really key area for us. We want to see price draw down into this, and anywhere within this, we're looking for long setups. So I'm not looking to short this. If we close below here, then we target the lows, But while we're holding this, we are super bullish. Now, I'm not running through the charts in this way in a triple screen system. We're focusing mostly on the daily and the 4 hour. I appreciate a lot of people that come on this show don't, intraday trade like I do, right? So they're looking for slightly higher time frame analysis. So hopefully that's helpful. But if there are any tickers I'm going through and you want to see lower time frames, please do let me know. So here we are on the 4 hour. Again, we want to see nice consistency with this. So we can see here that we have our 4 hour gap sat within a daily gap. This should offer a nice area of support here. And if we do want to look at kind of an execution based time frame, then what you're looking for is something like this, right? Again, we've taken external liquidity here. So now we want to see price respect these gaps. So looking at this gap here, just do that in green, just so it stands out a bit more. Now we're looking for price to ultimately respect this, We want to see this area hold, and then for price to continue. If we start closing below this, price might be purging a little bit lower to take liquidity below this low before we recover. So while we're here, we either want to see this, right? And then price shoot up. We close below here, then the assumption is that we're maybe looking to purge a bit deeper. But this 15-minute gap then becomes really important because we want to see displacement through this. We want to see that act as support. And then we've got a really good indication that this was just designed to catch people offside. We wipe out the liquidity and the over-leveraged traders with stops below this low, and then price can continue on a nice upward trajectory. Okay. Peter, XVS, yeah, sure, mate. I think we took a look at that last time, didn't we? Yes, XVS might still be on the chart. XVS for sure. How do you go to the American? Oh, do you know what? I absolutely did not get round to that, mate. It's just been so busy, but I have put it down in my notebook of things that I want to check out. Just been a mental, mental, but in a good way, right? In a really good way, been super busy. So that's where we are in INJ. Let's take a look at Gala. Okay, this is looking quite interesting, this one, right? So we've just come up and taken AR. Williest, IMX. Sure, my friend, IMX. There we go. Right, so we're going to have a real rip through there. You see if we can really cover some ground and get most of them done in the next 15 minutes and then let you guys and girls go and get on about your day. So, daily scale, what are we doing here? Plenty of liquidity resting above here. We've just taken this high. We've got this beautiful intermediate term high here as well. So, that we've taken this higher and we've just started to have a bit of a reaction here, right? We haven't kind of displaced above this. We've got no gap in here at the moment. So we need to be a little bit cautious here on a daily scale, all right? Probably price is probably looking to maybe have a little bit of a pullback here before it then rips a little bit higher. Even on a 4 hour, right? We can see here, price kind of hasn't really left us any gaps or that to kind of get involved in, so there's no problem. We can then drive down into the lower time frames, and this is where we start to see this really kind of like beautiful structure here, right? And what you want to see is nice clean structure. You want to always give way to the higher time frames. They will be the ones that exert the most control. But then if you can't find, you also want to be able to find key areas that fit and suit your system, right? You don't want to retrofit them. Keep the system, keep the overlay, be consistent. But at the same time, if the 4 hour isn't telling you anything, move down to the hourly. Just always respect that change in system, right? So from the hourly, we would move to a 5 minute. If we're looking at on the 4 hours as we would move to a 15 minute next, okay? So what have we got here? Well, if we're looking at the same principle, price ripped above, what did it do? Came back, filled this gap, yeah? Which we can see here, bullish gap. What happened? Price took a higher, found the gap, ripped higher. What then happened? Price took this higher, found this gap, yeah, balanced this, moved higher. So now we want to see some continuation in that, and we have this nice gap waiting for us here. Okay, so this is the area I'd like to see price kind of pull back down to this. Don't mind if we kind of wick below it and recover it, but then that's the kind of area that we would want to be looking to long this. If we were looking at this, in terms of like a dealing range, yeah, so we want to take the obvious low to the obvious high, so we're looking at it like this, then we would also say maybe price comes down into this kind of order block area, because we quite often like to see price have, around a 50% retracement for anybody there that really uses Fibonacci's, sometimes a little bit deeper, around to our kind of golden pocket or 705 area down here. Okay, so that's what I'd be looking at with Gala. Now, W. ET. Nice, okie doke. So let's take a look at this. Bom Biggie, my man, all the way from the Netherlands. It is a joy to have you on here, my friend. How are you, you beauty? Great to see you, mate. Very, very top bloke is our Biggie. From the school of Trader Dank, who's, one of the traders I literally could not respect more, just an absolutely top lad and one heck of a trader. If you're not following him, you've got to get on there and follow Dank. And yeah, it's great to see you on here, Biggie. Right, so W, here we are, wormhole. So daily scale, what are we looking at here? Still kind of being a little bit suppressed, kind of had a little bit of a close above this high. It's nudged itself up, hasn't it? But we've seen price kind of climb back down. Again, we haven't seen that displacement. 2P, GG. How the devil are you, my friend? Haven't seen you in a while. Hope you've been keeping well. Right, and then looking at this again, look how cleanly this is respected. Price comes in, it's just finding buyers down here. It just can't force itself down. There's one attempt here, clears out the liquidity below this low, sets us a beautiful bullish engulfing candle, and then we're moving higher. I think to really kind of cap this, what I'd be looking for here is this bearish fair value gap. I'll do the bearish ones in red, the green ones for bullish, just so that you'll typically see them, or almost always see them as grey on my chart. But I'll do them in this so you can kind of, for anybody that's maybe new, kind of helps it be a little bit clearer for you. All right, price has come up, rejected here within this gap, rejected here, rejected here. Now remember what we said, while we're within this bearish gap, we're always favoring short positions lower. All right, we can intraday trade longs if we've got a key draw on liquidity, right? But technically, you want to be remaining bearish here. What we want to see on a daily scale is price close above this, right? And then, we've got all of this beautiful liquidity resting above here, right? Equal highs here, this high here, not really many inefficiencies here. We've got a very small gap kind of through here, right? But apart from that, this thing could really, really fly. When you see charts like this, always excites me a little bit. So obviously we need to climb out of this first. So while we're still in here, we have to retain a bearish bias. All right. So now we're looking at this, right? We can start to get a bit more granular. Again, we're not doing this in a triple screen system where we're both using the daily and the 4 hours, our higher time frame, and that's kind of going to be our focus. So this for me now is setting up really, really clean. All right. Like we said, you want to be respecting these, right? But looking at market conditions, looking at the fact that what have we done? We've taken this high and we've displaced, right? No, we haven't had a strong close above it, but what have we done? We have set a bullish gap down here. Okay. Now, price has reacted at this already, and we've set this pin bar. So what we're now looking for is for this to hold, all right? If this holds, I would definitely consider some early positions here to have a run up, yeah? We want to see what the general crypto markets are doing. We're going to take a look at risk markets as well, like the S&P 500, see what the dollar index is doing, because they can give us a really key indication of the market's overall appetite for risk, right? If the market's got an appetite for risk, then it's very, very happy to munch down on some Bitcoin and crypto, all right? If you're looking at a more risk-off environment, when you see a very, very strong dollar, for example, then typically risk can really kind of stutter and stumble, but we've got good risk markets at the moment. We've seen some amazing moves on the NASDAQ, for example. We opened really, really strong on that. So hopefully that maintains. So with that in mind, we've got a nice low sat down here, right? If this candle closes without taking this low, then we've got a nice swing low there. What is it? It's an intermediate term low because it's within a fair value gap. Boom, price rips down into this. This is where I'd be looking to catch some bids. I wouldn't just be setting limit orders down there, by the way. I would want to see something like this, right? We want to see a low get set. We want to see liquidity purged below that low. And then the high here that takes liquidity below that low, you want to see a strong move above that. Then we look for that area to become support. All right. And again, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can look for a gap that you have in here. Yeah, a bullish gap. You can look for an inversion lower down, or you can even just look at this line here, or if there's a breaker candle in here, and look to kind of take some setups there. And you would do that on a lower time frame. All right. When the walking goes by and loses the election economy in the world, will be a better place. Yeah, exactly. Poor old Sleepy Joe, eh? So that's what I'm looking for there. This is really, really clean for me. I want to see price back above there, close above it on a daily scale, or if we're going to look to kind of catch some bids early and, look at some kind of riskier positions, because look, we've got really, really clear invalidation down here, right? We know we're wrong below this low. Yeah. So that's what we want to do. Obviously, we want to finesse that using a lower time frame, but that's the general idea. So wormhole, what we got? CTSI. Here we go. Right. So obviously did a little bit on this previously, didn't we? How's that TA worked out? Was it all total nonsense, or did we get a bit? Okay. So again, yeah, still being suppressed by this higher time frame gap, right? I think we must have been looking at this on a weekly scale, right? Yeah, perfect. So we were talking about this before, right? So again, this would be red just to signify, just to signal so that it's a bearish gap. We were looking at this area here, right, of mitigation. Because we had a particularly long downside wick on here as well coming into this secondary order block, we were looking at this kind of general area. Price did come down, right? We didn't quite close below this, but we can see how then when we open this gap, that's when we were taking shorts to liquidity lower down. Now, what we can also see here, right, is the price really didn't kind of reach down as far as this downside wick, all right? But again, if we're looking at this on a weekly scale, I know this is slightly higher time frame than we've done on the others. Yeah, then we would really want to see this closed above. And then I think it's really open season to this high, which is at about 0.3394, sorry, and then all the way up to here. So on a daily scale, what are we looking at here? So We've had a decent recovery here from price. And actually, look, as we were talking about before, what we want to see when price engages with these old highs and lows, in this case, the high, is that we have closed above this, right? We have got this long downside. I've not got an issue with that, though, because ultimately what we're looking for here is for price to then come down and fill this gap, right? So again, price moving down towards this is fine. You can even catch some cheeky intraday shorts if you've got the right setups and triggers. Want to find support in here and then look for our long setups from there. Always being aware that we're drawing up into this higher time frame gap, right? If we now finesse that a little bit further and look on the 4 hour, okay, we can see we had a couple of attempted trades on this one recently. This one obviously didn't go particularly well, but this one was an absolute belter, both based on the same principle that we're kind of being held below here. This one was nice and clean, so we're trading it into those equal lows. Ultimately, the reason for this was trying to target this low resistance liquidity. That's basically these untapped lows there. Just kind of got in on the move a bit early and didn't quite get it, and then it actually sold off over the weekend, I think that was, wasn't it? Yeah, nice. So now we're down on a 4 hour. What are we looking for? We've got a higher time frame gap here. So if we want to look for the same narrative, what are we telling ourselves? Well, we've got this nice 4 hour gap down here as well, right? So this is the area we want to see respected. Price can easily purge down into this. If we're looking at this in terms of a range, yeah. Again, the lower 50% is where we want to be, looking for bids, okay? So just down in that area. I think it's really good for price to just have a healthy correction down here, maybe take out liquidity below these lows. Yeah, and then ultimately, you want to see that sweep move on a lower time frame, of course, and then we look to trade this higher. Now, we've got a really, really big gap here, right? So if we were looking at that and price did come down and start closing below this, then we'd be looking to kind of take out these lows first here, then this intermediate term low here, and so on and so forth. All right, guys? So let's move ourselves back to a daily. Biden's become an antique of the White House. Maybe they'll just stuff him and keep him there when his term's over. What are we on to now, fam? Right. Aave. This brings back some memories. What do we want? I actually want the Perpetual USD. Let's have a look. Let's go with our partners Binance, shall we, actually? I'm very much a FEMEX man, I have to say. We are partnered with the biggest and the best exchanges. I love FEMEX though, here in the UK. If any of you guys are interested in that, by the way, or any of the offers and bits and pieces that we've got, be it membership or access to exchanges, please do check out the description. You can find all kinds of goodies in there. And also our website is packed full of free alpha, right? So do that. Loads of videos on the YouTube channel. So please do pop in and say hello, or on the Twitter. Now, Aave, again, really, really nice. Prices come up. We've taken out these highs. I think we got some equal highs in there as well. Again, see how these become such key liquidity pools. And this is just looking really healthy, right? Nice initial breakout, right? This is the key part for me here. We've gone from setting a lower low, lower high, higher low. Now we're starting to really see some movement. So again, I know a lot of these are going to seem similar, guys, right? But this is the gap we want to see hold, right? While price is in here, down into this gap, hold, look for longs, right? I'm not too fussed about these. We have got a lot of gaps here, but ultimately these are just going to act on a draw for price. When we really kind of step back into a bullish structure here, you want to pay attention to what's over here on the left, but certainly don't let it put you off, right? You want to be much more focused on your side of the curve. All right, so now we're stepping into the buy side of the curve, unless we close below this, right? In which case then we would look at that. Yeah, really good point, Joshua. Aave does move very well. It's always been a very, very clean asset to trade, actually. Long story short, everything is bullish. Do you know what? I should have just opened with that, wouldn't I? I could have gone and made myself a nice fresh cup of tea and we could have all gone about our day. Now that tea is very, very much lukewarm at best. But yeah, a very good point. Everything is very bullish. Simon, thank you, mate. So look, same thing here, okay? Now, price doesn't have to do this, but if we're looking at this in terms of the range, right, you would want to see price kind of come down. This fair value gap here, this looks really, really nice to me. Doesn't mean it has to go there, right? Again, remember when things are really running hot, they don't necessarily pay attention, especially to me. But this is it. Daily gap here, that's drawing price down. We've had this beautiful expansion higher. It's really, really healthy for price to come back, fill these inefficiencies. Market makers like that as well. We've got our daily gap over here. We've got our 4 hour gap here, our 50% range. If we want to be really, really textbook here, guys, we want to see price coming down into this and then you know, catching a rip a little bit higher. Atom. Here we go. So what, loads of stuff on the Atom chart, packed full of goodies. All right, so again, these are all just the same principles, guys. You'll see some of these will obviously be from a slightly higher time frame, right? Depends on what we're doing. If you're looking to invest in assets, if you're looking to day trade them, etc. We can see this gap supporting the market still, right? And then we can see this gap here suppressing the market. So interesting situation, right? We can see that the price is still really struggling here, right, with this inversion. So this is interesting. Again, look, this was a bullish gap originally. Look, see how we displaced above this high. So we were in here looking for long setups. Ultimately, what then happened, and I think we'll see it when we drop to the 4 hour, is we then, when we closed below this here, that was our indication that price is seeking liquidity lower. All right. So again, when we close below this here, we're looking for price, and especially when we close below this, which now doesn't really have any relevance to it. All right. Let's see. Would you like to see Atom ETH? I know a lot of people that would. So really, I mean, this is actually a really interesting one here, Atom, because it's not quite as bullish as the others, is it? Although, you know, when we kind of break this down and look a little bit closer, we've kind of taken a very, you know, a short-term high here. We do have this gap, right, that's currently supporting price. You know, this is going to be a key area to get above, though. I really would like to see price kind of close above this. Then we're going to target this higher. And then if we are bullish, price can move really, really quickly through these gaps, all right, and really kind of just disrespect them and rip. Look at these previous gaps here. Yeah, here, for example, price did not care about them. The sell pressure was just, you know, too overwhelming. So now this is an interesting one, right? Because on a 4 hour, this all of a sudden looks a little bit cleaner as well. Yes, we've got this daily gap down here, but let's remember we have to wait for the day to close, right? So it's no good kind of looking at this gap thinking, oh my God, price is trading down here, let's get super bearish, because what can happen? Price can go down into that gap. You get a nice long tail wick back in and it closes within. So if we want to finesse this, Zayed, yeah, sure, of course, my friend. Got to cover the biggest beast in the market, haven't we? BTC. We'll cover that one at the end, mate. So we can see this hold. So while this is on here, we're still bullish, right? That's why sometimes if you're using systems like this, especially if you're new to it and while you're kind of learning, you can do the bullish ones in green, because there's an indication when you come on here not to panic if price is trading down here until you get the daily close, right? This is still bullish. Now, we have this beautiful, big, clean, bullish gap here, right? Let's get rid of that for a second so it doesn't distract you. And then we can see price come into this area here. So again, love to see price come into here, right? Get a nice little buyer pattern in here. And then immediately I'll be targeting this higher. And then, you know, I would be cautious trading this intraday just because this area has just been such a strong area of resistance. But ultimately, we can see price drawing up into this. I think once we kind of start getting above this, again, remember that's on a daily, so we need to see a daily close. That's when we can kind of get in. What this allows us to do is be a buyer in here, right? Mitigate our risk when we get up, when we start approaching this, because then we can move our stops to entry. We can kind of either hedge, for example, as well, which kind of just mitigates our risk. Wait for that daily close. If we get that daily close, we've got a brilliant buy, really nice and low, and then we can start kind of compounding or pyramiding as we move up. Okay, so this one for me on Atom, want to see how it reacts here. Again, if we start closing below this, I think we're going to kind of have a bit of a deeper dive into this. And on a daily scale, you can see we've got these relative equal lows down there that weren't tapped. All right, but this is also worth noting. We can see balanced price range here. Yeah, bearish gap, bullish gap closes through it. We can see the bullish gap overlays it as well. We can see how these two areas here have offered really, really nice support for price. Okay, but obviously really, really dangerous market to be bearish in at the moment, but we would have to flip our bias if we started closing below there on a 4 hour scale. Okay, perfect. So what was that one? We've covered off Atom now as well. XVS, let's have a look here, shall we? XVS. Oh, we've even got this on a perp one, have we? Lovely, lovely Binance, lovely Femex chart. Wonderful. Right, let's have a look. What have we got? Wow, that's a gap, isn't it? Look at that. Very similar to like we saw that big sell-off with, you know, what with most, right? But especially, it was especially obvious on the Atom chart when we kind of took a look at that as well. I really, really like this, right? All of these beautiful untapped highs, all these, you know, liquidity pockets here, 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 right? we can see these things really start to draw price. So I'm asking myself here, what's capping the market? Yeah. If we look at this very skinny bearish FVG here, we've just inverted this. Okay, look, resistance, resistance, resistance causes a big sell-off. Yeah. Now price has kind of had this recovery here. Yeah. We've come up. What have we done? Taken out this high, formed this gap. Okay. I know broken record time, guys, but this is the key thing for me. We've inverted this now, and that's exactly what we wanted to see here. And what have we done? We've left beautifully engineered, I think basically perfect, actually, equal highs. Let's have a look. What was that? 10.144, 10.142. Okay, almost, literally like a gnat's breadth out. That's just so clean for me. This is where we want to be looking for our long setups here. Let's see how the 4 hour sits over this as well. Love this. I know that we're seeing this very similar. You must think I'm absolutely nuts, but drawing down into this, as long as we hold this, remember this is on a daily, so this can hold here. We've also got this on a daily too, which means that we can come all the way down to here if we want, as long as we wick back up and close above. So we don't want that to kind of put us off, right? So what we're doing, and actually these aren't quite equal. I mean, you could look at them as equal highs, right? But actually this has kind of been tagged here. So we would actually focus a lot more on this high rather than the previous one, just because the liquidity was swept, especially and aggressively in this pullback. So what does the market like to do? Well, a lot of people, you know, you hear that people use the term retail as if it's a derogatory term, and it's not. Retail and me, you, almost all the people, right, that you can imagine. So, you know, we're talking about massive institutional buyers. All right, and sellers, of course. So when they're coming in. Now, what happens is that your smart money or your major players are often involved a lot lower down. Yeah. So you got natural higher time frame areas to take profit. Now, what happens is if you then want to get involved here, you don't really want to be a buyer here, right? You've already had the rip. So you're buying at a very dangerous place. But retail, and a lot of people do. People start kind of coming in here, coming in here, coming in here. Then what happens is you get people's stop losses, right? And the market loves to rip down, take those leverage positions, yeah, catch everybody offside, and then go in the opposite direction. And this very much looks like that kind of move. You know, we saw something very similar here. Price had this initial rip, people getting all very bullish up here, right? What happens? People's stop losses are all down here, 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 and they all ultimately get wiped out. Then price has this big reversal here. One thing I do like to say, I do love my little broken record tune, but look at the way that this inversion fair value gap here closed above this. Then what do we do? Rip to this high, and this high. Really, really beautiful. Okay, so looking for longs in and around this area here. Again, if we want to add even more granularity to that, in an ideal world, we'd see it come back below our 50%, which again lines up really, really well with this bullish gap. 1 second, guys. Let me just blow my nose so I don't get too nasally on you. Sorry, P. So just seen your question as well. Thank you, Erica, for jumping in on that. So that's where I am with XVS, mate. I think this is looking strong as well. I think we could see these areas key, obviously daily areas hold on a 4 hour, looking for a, you know, a bit more of a drop down into here. Look, if we hold this, yeah, and again, I know going lower time frame here, but if we hold this moving into our New York session, then quite simply, you know, I just want to see these areas here so we can see how that's offering resistance at the moment. Yeah, price came into this, bodies respected the bearish gap. So now we're down here. We want to see liquidity purged out below this low. Obviously, if we're going to have a quick recovery, I'm more than happy to see price, you know, even if it doesn't happen today, do something like this, right? Then we want to see that sweep, recovery, and then we can look to really long this, all right? But ultimately, price might not do that, so it might actually be really, really strong and catch a bid early, in which case then we want to see a low taken out like we see here. But I would just really like to see this key gap inverted. We've got another little one here, but this one has precedent, right? Price sold off, treated this as resistance, and then has gone back down. It has been rebalanced, but price closing above this would give me great encouragement that we're going to come and make an attack on this low resistance liquidity up here, all right? Again, not many gaps. We can just see these beautiful highs where we've got price sat and ready to go for, okay? So that's where I would be looking on that. Let me just take a look at your question there. Charting is great the way in depth. Not expensive loads, but really, is it not there? It must be a fundamental of the coin and or companies as important. Yeah, I think. Look, I think fundamental analysis on this, by the way, Peter, is really, really key, right? You look, at the end of the day, projects, what they do. That's why at the Bird Nest we have such an experienced and broad team covering fundamental analysis, technical analysis, algorithmic trading, etc. Because it's really bringing together that breadth of knowledge. And what I can say is, you want to find good educators that kind of, of course, I'm going to recommend ourselves. I get to see and work with a team every day, which I'm incredibly proud of. But whoever it is that speaks to you, whoever it is that kind of garners that trust, and whoever you find as a good educator, as long as they've got some track record behind them. Then you want to find that kind of crossover. You want to find really good people with your FA. I love Chris, Crypto Assessor, who works with me, absolutely fantastic fundamental analyst. Someone like Kazi, who's just really, really next level dude as well, and just a top human being as well. And kind of merge that in. You just don't want things. For me, I'm a really simple creature. I don't like things to come in and distract me too much. So, of course, every morning with the team, we brief, we find out what's going on in terms of news catalysts and drivers. And then you can overlay the technical elements with it, so if you know that you've got some news hitting the market, if you know this, like when we saw things like the Ethereum upgrade, etc. Again, you want to be careful. You don't want to just be buying on the basis of news, because you quite often hear the term, buy the rumor, sell the news, right? That means you want to buy into the pump leading into it. Quite often you see these big reversals before things then really kind of cap themselves off. Yeah, especially if you're a hodler, right? If you're someone that's looking for this kind of long term, definitely your fundamentals are going to be key. But also as well, look, if you kind of like zooming out on the longer term and you're looking for these areas, you can always overlay these technicals, right? Remember, like we were saying before, if you're looking at these kind of key areas to buy, look at the down close candles before price really caught a bid, right? And these kind of areas, then you can just look into here and say, okay, are you getting any kind of, structural shift, especially if you're looking at this on here, right? And again, if I was looking at this in that term, I'd be saying, okay, buyers in here, right? What have we just done? Still see here, look, you're still in this downtrend, low, lower, high, higher, low, little higher, high here. And what have we done? We've created this 12-hour gap below us. So somewhere like in here, because you've also got, if you're looking to kind of hold and buy into these positions, you're happy to buy lower down, that's great. If not, then you've got really clear invalidation, right? Either below this low, or if price closes, this gap out. And then from there, obviously, you can kind of zoom back out again. If you do move lower, you can look to catch some bids in here, for example. And then you can align that with your news, okay? What was that? ACS? IMX. Let's have a look. What have we got on here? Oh, okay. So again, looking at this one on a weekly scale, this was a key target for us, right? Just clear and obvious liquidity resting above there. And again, look, when we displaced above this higher here, this was an area we were really keen to see holder support. When it closed below it here, the assumption was that price was looking for liquidity lower, and typically it hunts out lows then. I don't know if it actually took this in the end, but that was our kind of, that was our real kind of target here at the time. But I think it's left equal lows because we've obviously come back to the chart since. Looking at this on a daily scale, right? Let's just get rid of these for a moment. By the way, that was an inversion gap, so we can see the importance that had. We can also see the importance that this had here and still does, okay? Balanced price range. Bullish gap, disrespected with a bearish gap, price sells off lower for liquidity. Resistance, resistance. What do? Close above it, flip this to support. Now these areas we want to see these holders strong support, right? So while we're in there, I know we're kind of seeing similar here. We've not really managed to displace much above that, right? But we have. And in doing so, in the energetic move higher, we've left this gap, right? So that's what I'd be looking to hold here. Okay, so I'd be looking for positions in here. We see if the 4 hour aligns, and it does. We've got this nice gap here on the 4 hour, right? Remembering that we can see that slightly deeper correction into here. But this is the kind of what I would call the line in the sand, right? If we started to kind of daily close below this here, then one thing that does look quite tasty is this liquidity that's starting to build down here, all right? Ultimately, we don't want to fade this asset right now. And we have also inverted this really large gap here with the close above. So I'm pretty heavily bullish on IMX at the moment. And then BTC. Before we finish up on BTC, let's go over to our fine friend whose name, I'm so terrible pronouncing names, and I really do like to try. So I'm really sorry if I murder this for you. Abin Anand. Andan? No, I've completely killed that, haven't I? But anyway, my friend, apologies that my crass British nature can't pronounce your Beautiful name, but let's take a look at that for you and we'll finish on Bitcoin, shall we? We'll get ourselves in within our hour ticker then. NWC. Hopefully find some nice. Is it this one, mate? Looking at it as a crypto asset or the traditional market one. Let's take a look at this anyway, shall we? And then if it is the other one, mate, please do let me know. Yeah, I don't blame you for that, mate. Yeah, we've all kind of got our systems and that. I've certainly got some long-term bags, and I really did stack up quite heavily on those dips as well in some in some projects I think are going to do really, really well. And if you guys have any interest in that, please do go and check out Chris, Crypto Assessors. He's been making some mad money this year, and had some unbelievably good picks. So, go and check that. His whole portfolio is available for everybody to check at the Bird Nest, as is the P&L of all of our trading if you're interested. So, what have we got here? Driving down in the downtrend here, we can see this office liquidity stacking up here. Price is currently holding this gap. Draw this in. So we're holding this gap here. And it really does look to be kind of like forming some kind of base here, right? We kind of got these lows coming in. Every time we're tapping into this, the reaction is getting a little bit stronger. This looks a little bit weak at the moment. We don't have anything really kind of clear and obvious. Just trying to see if we've taken out these lows we have. So our next key low is down here at 0.10214. Whenever we kind of see this, we're not reacting from a gap. It's nice to see some kind of liquidity sweep. Yeah, that is the one. Awesome. And we want to see price sweep this and then really recover, right? We've not really got much more detail than that on the daily. Okay. So now we're going to move down to our 4 hour, see if that gives us any more information. And we can see here on the 4 hour that we're currently holding this gap. All right. So that's quite nice. Again, really, really simple. If we close below this here, and I'd like to see a recovery here, right? Because look what we've done. We've swept liquidity below this low. Yeah. We've down the fair value gap, makes it an intermediate term low. So we want to see liquidity taken and a strong reaction. I'd still be favoring longs in here, unless we close below it, in which case then we've got the daily low here, and we've got this other low here sat at 0.10441, which will be a really nice target to see the sweep there. And then when we get back into this area, we can start looking for long setups down there. Going nowhere and a waste of space. Flux. I don't know, mate. I don't know. I would have to bow my head to those with more knowledge of the fundamental side than me. So I'll certainly ask Chris for you, or drop him a message on Twitter. Bond high. Sorry, mate. I didn't see you coming there. Yeah, let's have a quick look at that, and then we'll finish on Bitcoin, right? But that's going to be the last one. So Retic. Ooh, okay. Let's have a look at this. Let's take a look at this on Mexi. Okay, nice. I mean, obviously not much about this. This has launched and obviously had a really good rip. So the team will be very happy with that. Holding this bullish gap at the moment. Seeing a nice kind of pin bar candle here. Slightly longer nose on that, right? You want to see more body than nose really, but that's not too bad. Holding this in the moment. So on a 4 hour scale, still looking bullish. Obviously need to be a little bit careful. Not a lot of price history on this one. This one has just had a really kind of big rip from the off. So let's move a little bit low. Let's see if the hourly kind of tells us anything. Ah, beautiful. Right, okie doke. So nice reaction from a higher time frame gap here. Currently being suppressed under this bearish gap here. So go time for me. Get the hourly close above that and then targeting this high first of all, right, which is at 2.3610. And then what I assume is the all-time high at 2.4900, all right? So again, hourly closer on the hourly chart now. If I was going to do that and I got that hourly close, I'd jump onto the 5 minute personally, look for our setup that we've just been discussing. We see a low swept, yeah? And then you want to see liquidity engineered. You then want to see the high that swept the low, and then you can be a buyer in here, all right? That's how I'd be looking at that one. So hopefully that has helped, my friend. And then last but not least, and finishing up almost on time today, let's take a look at our Bitcoin chart, shall we? Our old friend Bitcoin. Sorry, because there is going to be a load of mess on this chart. because this is the chart that I trade on. So let's just get rid of these. Okay, nice. So again, broken record time, we can see it's a little bit of a skinnier one, but we can see how this inversion here, right, which we were talking about, looking for that to be bearish, flipped it to bullish, closed through it, becomes a balanced price range as well as an inversion gap. Okay, these are key areas of support. I think we actually covered this last week on the stream, saying how we're looking for this area to hold and price to push up. So now we find ourselves in a very similar situation, right? We've kind of taken out some highs. This, by the way, is really of key interest here. This kind of small order block here, because look, price sold off aggressively from this. Resistance, resistance, resistance again, right? Now, what we really want to see is price close above this, and then I think this thing could absolutely skyrocket. But at the moment, quite simply, we've got a nice bullish gap down here. Okay, so that's what I'm looking to do, looking for price to kind of hold this, catch a bid, and then move higher. If I'm looking at this on the 4 hour, we want to see that kind of similar TA overlap. Maybe we get a purge a little bit deeper down into this 4 hour gap lower. Again, we absolutely don't have to. We've tagged into this already, so this is where price looks to be getting a reaction. We've got a nice pin bar candle here as well, although we've kind of set this doji-ish kind of bearish candle here. No real body on it though, right? So that can very easily be indecision from the morning session. This is going to act as two things, right? This is currently kind of capping the market, but it's also going to be the draw, yeah? So if we are bullish here, then this is the first kind of point that we want to look for, all right, which is at 7436.8 on Femex. And that's where we want to kind of draw into until we close above this, however, and then I think we're going to come at least to this high, all right, which is at 72,029. All right, if we want to go a little bit more granular here and really see what price is up to, especially as we're kind of starting to move towards our New York session. And then when we come down to here, right, again, we can see we've got these kind of gaps emerging. Yeah, ideally what you want to see is a nice singular clean one. So when we close this up, if excuse me, if this closes in an hour, yeah, and we still have this gap, then for me, closing above this would be a signal to jump down on the low time frames and, you know, take some intraday plays at least into this level here. But ultimately on a higher time frame, we want to see that closed above. So really good question here. A lot of work's involved in charting. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and to be honest, I really like stripping the charts off. That's why I save all my old data, look at it with a fresh pair of eyes. It's just a nice way to kind of remove all the noise from the chart, come back onto it, and then kind of look at it fresh. So while we're holding these, right, higher time frame, we're bullish, you know, on a slightly lower but still higher time frame for framing. We're still bearish while we're kind of below this. Doesn't mean that we can't catch a bid here, but it was just to get back to Simon's question here. How big a chance is it that we revisit 62K? Well, quite simply for me, my friend. Right. And like I said, I think I did it in my Bitcoin report on Sunday. We kind of moving into this gap here. Yeah. So we've left this gap unfilled. And what we were discussing here is, you know, we set this order block. Yeah, which is then when price closes above that. So we do that close with a bullish engulfing. Look how well that level's then respected by the bodies of the candle. Unless we start to close below these and really come down into this, which I would still be looking for longs in here, we expected price to really take off. And this is a really good example of how, you know, you can sit there and have an expectation before this price action played out, the price is going to come down to here and move up. This is why you've always got to have plans both ways, right? Because you just don't know if price is really bullish, then, you know, it's not going to listen to you, and it's certainly not going to give you these key buying areas. It can just really rip. But it looks like it's giving us a shot over here, right? We've got this down there. So to answer your question, mate, unless we close back below this, yeah, in which case then I think we could come down. I'd be surprised if this didn't hold, right? And I think the bottom part of that, I would see price coming to maybe kind of 63, 64. Start closing below that, we've almost certainly seen a shift in structure at that point. Then I think price could be looking lower. But at the moment, this is the area that I'm looking to hold, all right, before price moves up. All right, guys, look, thank you so much for joining in with me today. It's always a pleasure to be online. We've got about 2,500 people live with us today, which is an awesome, awesome thing. Also, I'd say a really special thank you to a lot of you who have been sending in birthday messages. I am creeping 1 year closer to 40 now, so that is basically boomer territory for anybody in the crypto industry. So a huge thank you to all of you for that. Anybody part of the TBN membership, we will be doing our live trading session. We're going to be covering that in about 15 or 20 minutes. We'll get onto that one, all right? But the rest of you, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And also remember, guys, that when we're looking at this, sorry, just to finish up on this quickly, we just really want to look at the news, all right? So as we're looking at this, right, let me zoom this in for you a little bit. Look at the week that we've got today. What do we have here? FOMC meeting minutes, all right? Now, that doesn't take place until 7 p.m. tonight, but you will see a lot of positioning in the markets today, okay? And then to remember as well that any of these kind of red folder news that we see in the US, so flash servicing PMI, flash manufacturing PMI, and especially for me, I always have an eye on this one, the unemployment claims. All right, we saw that have a huge effect on the market recently. Keep an eye on those red folder news days. Yeah, you can see some nice injected volatility, but there will also be a lot of market trickery going on as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for your birthday wishes and also for joining me on the stream. Wishing you all a fantastic week ahead. Look forward to seeing some of you around the nest. And if it's something you consider, come along, grab yourself a free trial, come and get involved. We've got an awesome membership over there. And come and trade with me over at Femex, guys. I look forward to seeing you over there too. All right, have a fantastic week and take care.